You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everybody? This is KCSN Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast here at KC Sports Network. I'm DJ Kissel. Thanks for hanging out, spending part of your day with us. Please hit that like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or hit that follow button if you're watching or listening, on your favorite podcast platform. The Prince of Chiefs content, Nate Taylor from The Athletic and Times Hours fame, will be joining me here in just a few minutes to answer our weekly 5 burning questions, just as we do every Tuesday here at KCSN. But before Nate tells us if the Chiefs have any shot to beat the Bengals on Sunday, a quick word. You know the deal from our friends over at DraftKings. 4 NFL teams, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer? You can feel the conference championship thrills with stepped-up same-game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. Chiefs opened as 2.5-point favorites over the Bengals, and that line almost immediately dropped to just 1 point. Obviously, the public is loving them some Bengals right now, and based on the way they dominated the Bills, plus Patrick Mahomes' health with that ankle, I get it. I would never bet against Andy Reid. We're going to get Nate's thoughts on this here in a little bit, but the Vegas line does not surprise me. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code KCSN. New customers can bet $5 on the conference championships and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, let's welcome on the Prince of Chiefs content, Mr. Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Nate, tell me something good.
They've accomplished the mission, in my opinion, BJ. I've said
Mission
this before.
accomplished.
I've
Put
said,
it on a banner on a ship.
I'm not saying bring
It's
out
over.
a banner, but I just want to remind people they made the AFC Championship game with a team with probably half the guys who really hadn't obviously played in the Super Bowl, had not made the Super Bowl. Of course, a lot of the rookies actually played pretty well Saturday against the Jags. So that's the first thing I can tell you that's good. The second thing is, hey, I know this is, Nick Wright, and I want to give him total credit here because he said
I haven't seen this one yet.
He said it like midway through the season, and I was like, I don't know, Nick, because it's halfway through the regular season. But he started talking about the Arrowhead Invitational, and it was something that I had not heard before. And I was just like, you know what? That is really catchy. And they've done it again. They are hosting the AFC Championship for a historic, unprecedented 5th straight time. It is legitimately the Arrowhead Invitational. I know some people are now calling it the Patrick Mahomes Invitational because he's obviously played in the previous 4. He will probably play on Sunday. I would find, I would say this: Patrick Mahomes would have to have a legitimate setback for him not to play Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, Andy Reid on Monday said that he doesn't feel like it's now. Again, I should preface this: this is the coach who's not dealing with a high ankle sprain. But the coach said, "Well, he had a similar high ankle sprain in Jacksonville, ironically enough, to start the 2019 season, and he played every game up until the dislocated kneecap against the Denver Broncos." So I put it on Twitter. He threw 4 touchdown passes the following game. Now, yes, the Bengals are not the Oakland Raiders of 2019.
I remember all of this because the play in which he got hurt in Jacksonville was also right at the same time in which Miles Jack and the whole Jacksonville Jaguars team lost their mind and almost had a fight on the field. It was the first time I had ever been on the sideline doing sideline radio, and I had Mahomes hurt. I had a fight breaking out. Miles Jack was kind of walking towards where I was. He was walking towards me, but where I was standing on the sideline, Kelsey's chirping. That was he and Ronnie Harrison were getting into it. There were so many things going on that I just had an absolute anxiety attack on the sideline. Telling my producer, Dan Israel, I was like, there are so many things happening. It's 118 degrees on the field. I do not know what to do right now, Dan. Please coach me through this. So I remember that, and then I remember the game at Oakland because that was the last game ever played in NFL history on a baseball/football combo field, and remember that one well. But yeah, I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to come out and throw that. I saw you guys all tweeting, all the beat writers tweet that comment about the one in Jacksonville was worse. Maybe it's the context. Maybe it's the context now because now we know what he is and all the records that he's broken. Like I was right there. This one looked a whole lot worse, and this one, because of the context, is in a much different situation, Nate. But before we get into the 5 burning questions, I do want to ask, because you can add so much color to these stories because you're in the locker room, because you're at the pressers, and you can hear the tone and you kind of get a vibe of how people talk about it and how people answer this. What can you tell us about the way the locker room was after that game? Was it still upbeat, or was it like, I'm glad we won, but 15 might be a little down right now?
The entire essence of the locker room, BJ, was, whoo! All right. Okay, we got another week. Woo! And, some guys were already talking about, like, hey, we played on Saturday, so that means Pat's going to have Sunday all the way through, like, halfway of Sunday, because, of course, the AFC, the league does this every year. They alternate who plays the first championship game, but this year...
And no traveling.
Right.
And no traveling.
Which I think is huge, because you don't want to put a quarterback on an airplane when he's trying to reduce swelling in his ankle. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys were pretty relieved. There was a little bit of joy, I think, for a lot of the young guys, right? They'll never forget getting that first win in the postseason, of hearing a lot of the veterans talk about it, but obviously not going through it for the first time. For someone like Jalen Watson, like, that's a pretty big moment. That's a moment where I made a one-handed interception to essentially, like, seal a victory on national television in the postseason. For guys like Isaiah Pacheco, like, these are pretty big deals. This obviously boosts the confidence level for those guys, but I get the overall sense that the team was just like, thank goodness we got through that. Thank goodness he's upright, and we'll see how it looks as the week sort of moves on. And I think, Wednesday's practice becomes really the most important practice of the entire season. And how much he's managing. I mean, I'm going to probably project right now and say he'll be a limited participant, but what you hope to see is that he's limited Wednesday, and that he can at least do the same stuff Thursday, because of course that will be the first time he'll really move on his feet, where he'll really go through the drop backs, the fundamentals, the actual, tools that are going to be necessary to throw the football. If he practices Wednesday limited and he does it again Thursday, that is at least a good sign that, okay, he's trending in a direction where he can be available to the team on Sunday.
In watching that game, at least from TV, we were up at the Holiday Distillery doing a little watch party, a little birthday celebration up there. And I was watching him on the sideline, and it was when Henny was in, and he obviously wasn't coming back in right away, but he was standing up, and I'm like screaming at the TV, like, put him on a couch, get his foot in the air, get that thing taken care of, Rick. I know you're a professional, you know what you're doing, but I'm a genius over here. I'm 3 drinks deep. I know what to do here. It's like, get him off his right foot right now. Let's take all the advantage of all the time that we got in case we win this game to get that foot in the air. But before we move on and get to the 5 burning questions, you were mentioning, like, in the locker room, obviously the young guys, Pacheco, Jalen Watson, stepping up huge in this performance for their first win, as you mentioned, as rookies. Was Brett Veach, like, walking around the locker room with, like, a cigar in his mouth, just kind of like, you know what? Anybody want to ask me a question? Anybody want to talk to my guy? Was he hanging out with Pacheco with his arm around him?
He's trying to save it for one more week, BJ. He's trying to save it for one more week. The way this normally works, this is sort of inside journalism, inside how, the sausage is made. But in essence, if the team wins Sunday and they have advanced to the Super Bowl, Brett Veach will be waiting for all of us. He will have his own impromptu press conference. He will obviously praise, Mike Bradway, and obviously, Mike Bergonzi, obviously Chris Shea and Britt tell us what they do with the cap situation. He will go chapter and verse as to how a rebuilding year landed them in Arizona. So He was not in the locker room on Saturday. You know, he's a professional, BJ. He's been in these playoff situations before. But it is a massive indication that, like, hey, Zay Jones can get open once in the second half. Hey, Christian Kirk, really good player, but when we gotta have it, he's not going to impact the game. He's not going to be a reason why we lose. You know, Nick Bolton in his second time around, he's going to be in position to get the football when L'Jarius Sneed in his third time around gets the fumble. You know, Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, they did absolute work on Saturday. So for a lot of the young guys on the team, obviously what Chad Henne provided, because I'll be honest, I wrote a story at the end of the preseason, BJ, on the preseason finale, where I said, you know, Chad's year 15, 37. Shane Buechele looks good in the preseason. I don't know. Like, I know his contract is pretty much guaranteed. That was the case. That's, you know, obviously Chad Henne made the roster. But I was like, I think we got a real competition for quarterback too, because Chad Henne did nothing in the preseason. And now, now, ladies and gentlemen, you know why I'm not a coach, why I'm not an evaluator. Now you know why I try to provide information and not projections to this extent. So with Chad Henne doing what he did and the young players just being supplemental, complementary players, that's just like, man, they got a really nice balance. They got a really nice blend of veterans and young guys, and that's going to obviously position them well, in my opinion, for Sunday's game against the Bengals.
All right, let's get into the 5 burning questions. Let's talk about this game against the Bengals on Sunday. Kind of along the lines of the Mahomes stuff. I'm going out of order here because we were already just talking about this, but what's a bigger factor, in your opinion, in the Chiefs beating the Bengals on Sunday? Patrick Mahomes playing at an above average level compared to what's expected of him right now, or the Chiefs defensive line playing at an above average level for the Chiefs to get this done? I've got my take. I've shared it on the last 2 shows. I do like 15 shows a week. So a lot of my takes, people listening to these hear them multiple times. I can't come up with 100 different takes. I'm sorry.
You want to be consistent for sure.
Yeah. But I got my thoughts on this. You let me know. What do you think's a bigger factor in the Chiefs winning? Mahomes playing better than we expect him to with the bum ankle, or the Chiefs defensive line playing better than expected? And basically, to your point, actually, I don't want to give that away. That's the next one. So D-line or Patrick Mahomes, who has to play better?
I'm going to say this quietly.
It sounds a lot louder when you do that.
Okay. Just because I'm so close to the microphone, I just want to let everybody know. Watch that Bills-Bengals game again and tell me if the boys wanted to be on the field in the second half. They didn't. It has been, you know, I didn't know if someone was going to let this out the bag, because like I kind of heard this. I can't reference the gentleman's name right now, but basically, the Bills have acknowledged that they were exhausted through everything that they have went through for understandable reasons.
Yes.
The Chiefs defense is healthy. The Chiefs defense is motivated. The Chiefs defense won the game in the third quarter, BJ. It's about the defense. It's about getting pressure on Joe Burrow. And I know the Bengals offensive line played well. The Bills have no pass rush whatsoever. They had 3 replacement level offensive linemen and got no pressure on this man. 0. He got to do whatever he wanted in the snow, and that's hard to do. All I'm trying to tell you, BJ, is for a whole week, you're going to hear about how excellent Joe Burrow is. And he is excellent. He is the modern day Drew Brees, because all he does is get that. Like, look at his completion percentage. He's Drew Brees with better weapons. It's honestly terrifying.
He gets the ball out in like 2.2 seconds. He's the second fastest in the NFL to get the ball out. Drew Brees. That's good.
Kind of sounds like Drew Brees. I know people want to compare him to Brady. He's not Brady. He's Drew Brees. Also, you mean to tell me that if Spags and Joe Cullen look at this film, can't cook up something to get pressure on Joe Burrow in a hostile environment with 3 guys that have to play again? It's not like, hey, you know, one of their starters can come back. Like, unfortunately, he's going to have to get the ball out real quick. And then, of course, it comes down to tackling. But the Bills' defense was an abomination nation on Sunday.
Yeah.
They
didn't want to be there.
I was
something was off.
I was so sad because look, Matt Milano can't be your best player. And that's not saying anything bad about Matt Milano, but like he can't be your best player. Not with like, obviously Jamar Chase on the field. Somebody's got to pressure Joe Burrow. It can't be Matt Milano. So this comes down to Chris Jones, Frank Clark. Hell, Derek Knighty had an amazing second half on Saturday. Colin Saunders got some pressure. It's gonna take a little bit from everybody to make this work because there's got to be a mismatch and you've got to exploit it. But I just want to tell people right now, don't you dare look at that game on Sunday and think it's comparable to like what the Chiefs could do because the Bills didn't have the players on defense. And I know Josh Allen's gonna get a lot of flack because he did not play well. His accuracy was porous.
That's what we've seen from the Bills this year. That to fairness to everybody that's really paid attention, and we've talked about it on this show. Brett Coleman's talked about it. Trevor Sikkema's talked about it. Like the Bills have relied too much on him going God mode,
Superman
having
mode.
to do everything himself. That this was inevitably going to happen when you have to beat 2 or 3 good teams in the playoffs in a row. That at least one of those games was going to them reverting back to what we had kind of gotten glimpses of during the regular season, and ended up biting them. My take all week, Nate, has been all week. It's Monday afternoon when we're recording this. But my take has been, as much as people want to make a deal of Patrick Mahomes' ankle, and it is a thing.
Oh, sure.
Andy Reid has 8 days to game plan an offense around a quarterback who's not quite mobile. I have enough trust that Andy Reid can develop a game plan that will make sure that Patrick Mahomes is not being put in a bad situation, whether it's more to Kadarius Toney, whether we can get somebody else back that I don't want to give away one of the burning questions, another player that runs similar plays to Kadarius Toney. But that's been my take, is I'm not worried about the offense because I do believe that Andy Reid will scheme something up to where the Chiefs offense will be able to be function enough to put points on the board. It's going to come down to the defense. It's going to come down to the defensive line. And one player in particular that you said his Ring of Honor type game of getting that done was last week against the Jags. I'm saying it's this week. We're going to get more with Nate Taylor right after this. And who needs this win more, Chiefs or Bengals? That's the next question for Nate right after this break. All right, welcome back to KCS, an update. I'm BJ Kissel, hanging out with Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Nate, we've got one burning question down. We've got 4 more to go. This one, who needs this win more? The Chiefs, a Chiefs team that has not beaten Joe Burrow, that we are going – I'm already sick of it, and we've barely got into this week of nobody giving the Chiefs any credit, but they deserve. Hey, as much as we get annoyed about it, this isn't even people having to stretch to make this take. They have beat us. We have not beaten them. I get that. Who needs this win more, though, for legacy type purposes? I know everybody wants to win. I get all that. But is it a Chiefs team that people doubt whether or not they can beat this Bengals team? Or is it a Bengals team that, for going to the Super Bowl, getting back to the AFC title game, was still seen as the number 3 by most people? It's not just the biased Chiefs on. It was Bills were the favorite. Chiefs were right behind him. And then the Bengals were just that other team. Who needs to win more?
I love this question because obviously both need it, right? That's the beauty of it. If I have to pick, I kind of want to say the Bengals just because of everything I've said all season long. Guys, you're not supposed to make the Super Bowl this year. Like when the season began,
you've been consistent.
When the season began, the Chiefs were not supposed to make the Super Bowl. Now, of course, Mahomes has had an MVP season. The defense has gotten better as the season has gone along, and obviously the young players have been really they have been developed at a rate that is truly commendable from the coaching staff based on what the front office did and sort of identifying those traits and obviously finding ways to acquire them in the draft. They don't have Tyreek Hill. Like that's still a fact, right? Like I know Travis Kelce was awesome, was obviously at Hall of Fame levels in Saturday's game. But I do think the pressure is more on the Bengals. Patrick Mahomes is not healthy. He's not fully healthy. Joe Burrow has been the second best quarterback in the league in the second half of the season. You go through every stat, every metric. It is just like, man, this dude is playing lights out. They are in a situation where they're going to be where the Chiefs are probably in at least a year or two from a cap standpoint because Joe Burrow still on his rookie contract. Jamar Chase still on his rookie contract. Hey, T. Higgins still on his rookie contract. obviously they invested a little bit in the offensive line in the offseason. They have really nice veteran players. I call them red chippers. They do not have a blue chip player on defense at any level. Trey Hendrickson is like kind of their best defender, but sometimes I'll think, oh, it's Logan Wilson. And then other times I'm like, man, Cam Taylor-Britt is like really good for a rookie. I don't know who their best player is on defense. Maybe it's Mike Hilton, just because he can provide obviously coverage and obviously, being in the box and being just as good as like L'Jarius Sneed does for the Chiefs.
That dude is everywhere. That's the guy that I talked about earlier with Matt Miller. It's like, I know he's probably Jesse Bates would be another guy that you consider their best player, the safety. To me, it's Mike Hilton because he's absolutely, I don't think grading wise any of that he's going to grade, but he is, in my opinion, their most valuable. He's always around the ball when they're blitzing, doing a lot of the creative stuff that their defensive coordinator does. 21 is the one that is making it happen.
Yeah.
Very similar. I wouldn't say similar in play style because Tyrann Mathieu, I'm not going to compare anybody to that guy. But if you're looking for a person that just kind of everywhere does a little bit of everything, to me, that's Mike Hilton, their slot nickel cornerback, number 21. It's everywhere.
But they're red chips because they're obviously talented, but they're just technically sound. They don't miss a ton of tackles. They're always in the right position. Some third downs, it's like you said, Mike Hilton is coming down and he's going to be in attack mode. Sometimes it's Von Bell playing the robber role. Sometimes he interchanges with Jesse Bates, which is similar to what Spags does. Lou Amaruno, their defensive coordinator, sometimes he obviously drops back 8. That's what worked, last time in the AFC Championship game, in particular in the second half and overtime against Mahomes. Other times, he'll walk 7 guys up to the line of scrimmage, and you cannot tell who's coming based on either the tendency, the time in the game, and obviously the down and distance situation. So they are coached really well. They are not necessarily system players, but they are quality players who do rely on one another and are able to feed off of one another in terms of their roles or their dualities at times. I think the pressure's on the Bengals just because they're going to have to go through the roster churn mechanisms that the salary cap just forces upon you. And Joe Burrow is going to now command top flight money. There might be a time in the next 18 months where Joe Burrow is making more money on a per year average standpoint than Patrick Mahomes. That's like the wild thing. But like
based on football money, sure.
Yes, based on and like setting the market and the timing of which you get to it. Does he deserve more money than Dak Prescott? Yes. Does he deserve more money than whatever Justin Herbert gets? Well, Justin Herbert ain't even won a playoff game. So what did Josh Allen get? Joe Burrow should get that and more. So there might be a time where the way the roster is built, the advantages they have really set them up to obviously go on a run last year and then this year. And look, 15 is not healthy. I don't know what I don't know what Rick Burkholder and his staff will really do. Well, obviously, I'll obviously report on this as the week goes on. But if you're going to go on the Arrowhead for an AFC Championship game, what better position to go in knowing that like you've beaten the team already? You do have the psychological, maybe mental advantage because you've proven it not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. And their quarterback isn't fully healthy. He's not capable of being as elusive as extending plays and doing obviously the Mahomes magic that we see. He's going to have to do it a completely different way, in my opinion, versus every check's got to be right. Every adjustment's got to be there.
Yeah.
I audible to this, it's because I've done so much film study and I understand my opponent so well that I'm going to find a way to nickel and dime us down the field. And hopefully, to your point, maybe Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy, and Andy Reid have some schemes, have some plays that they haven't shown yet where you can really get the ball in space to somebody like Kadarius Toney to maybe get some chunk yardage out of it. But yeah, I mean, I think the pressure's on the Bengals just because they have a team that really stacks up with any of these other 3 in the race, right? I mean, they have a better quarterback than San Francisco. They don't have as many high-level players as San Francisco, but when you look at the defensive numbers, they're not far off. They've obviously beaten the Chiefs before. And I think for the Eagles, the Eagles roster is probably the most stacked from a talent standpoint, but I think the Bengals could be argued as, 1A to their 1B, or they could be right there 1 to 2 when you look at it from top to bottom, 1 to 53.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said about the pressure that's on the Bengals and the roster composition. And for Mike Brown, the Bengals owner, not notoriously for not spending money. I do not see them shelling out money for Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. I just don't see all those guys getting paid. And so in that regards, their window is small unless they have a GM that makes moves like what we've seen from Brett Veach, where it's a rebuilding year and they're the number 1 seed and they go out there and play. But I would argue that there's just as much pressure, if not more, on the Chiefs. And this is an unfair statement. And I'm going to clarify this and I'm going to add this disclaimer before I do. I understand that this is not a fair ask. But for the way in which nationally people have talked about Patrick Mahomes in anointing him because he has deserved it. He has the best start to any quarterback in NFL history. The way in which we discuss him, the way in which he annoys people, saying how many times we see on Twitter, oh, if Patrick Mahomes did that, like the internet would break. Like that stuff happens because Mahomes has earned the right to be that dude. He is him. He is that guy. Beating a team that you've lost to 3 times in a row in the playoffs in your house with a bum ankle is the kind of storyline that people get really tired about hearing with Patrick Mahomes. So in that regard, for a Chiefs team that had everything working against them, I think there is pressure on the narrative that has been placed upon Mahomes and this Chiefs team that we are the team that everybody is gunning for. I said for years, let's not become the Patriots. Let's be nice and not be like these condescending fans that talk down to everybody. And then inevitably, it's not even fans, although they defend it. It's everyone else talking about the Chiefs, which just pisses off every other fan base. And then we become the target. So the narrative being able to say our quarterback, best to ever do it on a bum ankle, still went out and beat you. We just didn't give it to you like we did last year. I think for most Chiefs fans will say the Bengals didn't go take it last year. The Chiefs gave it away. Speaking of last year's game, and this goes into what my third burning question for you, Nate. You had mentioned last week that you thought the game against the Jags was going to be Chris Jones' opportunity to put his name up in the Ring of Honor. Didn't disagree. He had a great game. He had 6 pressures.
Yep. He was really well. Yeah, he was really
Didn't
well.
Get the sack, which is fine, but he did enough to disrupt and be a problem for the Jags. For me, it's this one in this game against the Bengals because of what he said last year after the Bengals loss, in which you remember the game, there were a handful of plays that Chris could have made and didn't, which ended up being the ones that stick in my mind out. I was like, man, if he just would have brought Joe Burrow down on this play. So for me, this is the game that Chris Jones can etch his name up in the Ring of Honor. How do you feel about Chris Jones' opportunity to cement a legacy that's not just, man, he's a phenomenal player, great dude, big. I mean this in the most endearing way. He's like a giant kid. It's like just a giant fun kid to be around, who just happens to be an absolute animal on the football field. But what are your thoughts on his opportunity this week against the Bengals?
If it happens and it happens early, he could really impact or influence the play calling from the Bengals. And I get the sense that obviously Chris knows that it's important for, his resume, for his reputation, that he does get a postseason sack. He got really close last week against the Jags. The closest he's ever gotten is last season against the Bengals and Joe Burrow. But if they win an early third down where Chris is schematically given a one-on-one, where obviously it's a clear passing down, you can sort of put the linebackers in the A gap, or you could put him out wide, which they did at times against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, hey, we know that that's a replacement level guard or tackle. Let's see if he gets pressure early, if he hits Burrow early, I think that can have a cumulative effect, because we've already talked about how quickly Joe Burrow gets the ball out before anybody touches him. What happens if all of a sudden Jones dominates the line of scrimmage in a way that the Buffalo Bills could not? I cannot stress this enough. When the Bengals wanted to take shot plays down the field last week, Joe Burrow was under no pressure whatsoever. He felt comfortable. He was able to scan the second to third levels of the defense, and he's so accurate enough that, like, of course, Jamar Chase, even if he's double covered in the end zone, it's still a gorgeous ball. It was a touchdown. I know they overturned it, but like, that's one of the best plays that I think I've seen in a snow type game. But he was under no pressure in that situation. So if Jones can get pressure, if Jones takes on double teams, which I imagine the Bengals' entire game plan is centered around doubling this man and holding this man. They cannot call a hold on every play. I want to get this out of the way right now. I know Chiefs fans are going to be upset on Sunday because they're going to show replays where Chris Jones is getting held. And that's
who's the ref? Do we know who the ref? Have they announced those assignments yet?
I have not seen that, but look,
I got triggered as soon as you said Chiefs fans are going to be upset. I'm like, motherfucker, if you tell me that Carl Cheffers is calling this game.
I don't know who's calling the game, BJ. I don't care who calling the game. I'm just going to tell you what the Bengals are going to do. They're going to double team Chris Jones as many times as possible. And if he gets leverage on you, hold him for dear life, because that one holding penalty is way more valuable than having Chris Jones either hit Joe Burrow, a strip sack, impacting the quarterbacks, clocking his head as to when he needs to get the ball out, obviously giving the defense a momentum boosting, potentially game swinging play. Like, the hold is more valuable. So even if you have 2 holds in this upcoming game, that is an achievement, because as long as Chris Jones doesn't hit Joe Burrow, I think that should be their game plan. That's ultimately what worked in the first matchup against the Bengals. They double teamed him when he got leverage and he got an advantage. They held on for dear life. And, the referees didn't call those holding penalties or those potential 50-50 judgment calls based on subjectively how you sort of interpret the rule, which means, hey, Frank Clark needs to play well. Carlos Dunlap needs to play well. George Karlaftis, the list goes on. But even if Jones doesn't get a sack, he can still impact the game, because you might realize that the Bengals have to double team him on more than 2/3 of the snaps, which means there are one-on-one opportunities to have an advantage elsewhere.
I might regret this later, but I have some beautiful news as we sit here today that Ron Torbert will lead the crew for the AFC Championship game. He's fresh off a Super Bowl assignment from last season, but this will be Torbert's first conference championship game. He's in his 13th season, 9th as a referee, his 11th postseason assignment, including 3 wild card playoffs, 6 divisional playoffs, and then this will be the first conference championship along with the Super Bowl from last year. So maybe it'll be the next ref in line that Chiefs fans remember because of a bad situation. But
Andy Reid is doing a disservice to the team if he does not have the pre-game sort of meeting and advisory with the refs to say, hey, look, last time around, we think Chris got held a few times. Just keep
they can't block him.
Just keep your eyes in the backfield, when certain things are going on. So, before every kickoff in an NFL game, obviously the refs meet with each coach, and the coach sort of says, hey, we might have this on the way. Be aware of this. Obviously, Bill Belichick is great for hey, guys, we might run wacky formations to really upset John Harbaugh in an AFC Championship game to go back to the Super Bowl. We just want to give you an understanding that's we're going to do some funky what out here. Just make sure we're lined up. And then
change the rules about how much you need to be able to tell the other team that guys are ineligible and the whole the whole deal.
So look, I would advise Andrew Reid, hey, look, we looked at the tape. We know they're gonna probably double team him. Just keep your eyes on 95, and if he's being held, because we know that's a tactic they're gonna try to use to make sure that their quarterback stays upright.
All right, biggest matchup for you in this one, plus a Mecole Hardman update and his prediction. More from Nate Taylor right after this. All right, welcome back to KCS, an update. I'm BJ Kissel, hanging out with Nate Taylor from The Athletic, wrapping up this show with our final 2, we'll call them quick burning questions. Nate, first one, biggest key matchup for you. I know we're early in the week, but what is the biggest matchup for you in this game?
Nick Bolton versus Joe Mixon, or how you say P. Ryan's first name?
Samaje.
Man, there's so many names you got to remember. But yes, that I know that's probably not what people expected. But look, guys, the middle of the field is open. And the Bengals took advantage of it in the first matchup. And look, even in the AFC Championship game last year, Nick Bolton said, I missed a couple tackles. I missed a couple chances to have some interceptions, one on a tip ball, one on a scramble outside the pocket for Joe Burrow. I think if Nick Bolton tackles better, if he tackles as well as he did against the Jaguars, and look, you're going to be in a lot of 3rd and 4s, a lot of 3rd and 2s, and now it's time to have your best players win on the money down, whether that's L'Jarius Sneed in the back end, obviously, Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed. Obviously, if you get to 3rd down, it just lets Spags get wild. Spags, don't save any more blitzes. He ran some stuff in the 4th quarter that was absolutely maniacal. But you might need more of that against Joe Burrow, just because of obviously the firepower that the Bengals have. But it all comes down to, how do you do on 1st down? The Bengals are totally comfortable running the ball on 1st down, or sort of saying, hey, if we get to 2nd and 6, we are great, because now we can do whatever we want in the playbook. It's up to Nick Bolton to make these tackles in the middle of the field, whether it's Hayden Hurst, who played really well on Sunday, or obviously the running back matchup where, hey, he's a really good player for us, just as he's a really good player for y'all. Who wins the matchup more between, the running backs and or Nick Bolton?
Yeah, and I would go as far beyond Bolton when you talk about tackling, going back to the first matchup because of what Justin Reed had said, and all eyes were on him. But the safeties did not tackle well in this game either. And Joe Mixon didn't play in that game. They were trying to tackle Perine and couldn't do it.
Correct.
And so Joe Mixon's a whole different kind of animal. And so, yeah, that the safeties being able to come up and tackle. And I just want to see at least once. And I know they're so dangerous with their double moves with Jamar Chase, but knowing that Joe Burrow gets the ball out so quickly that I'm going to give a shout out to the defensive quality control coaches. I want somebody to find the right tendency and the right situation, the right formation, the right splits by the wide receivers to where they say, hey, when they're in this part of the field with this formation and these splits, he is going to run a dig or he is going to run a quick out or a slant. And I want Trent McDuffie or one of these young corners to trust that they're not going to get completely burnt and maybe just kind of give Thornhill or Reed, hey, I'm jumping this quick one. And if I get beat, you make sure you protect me on the backside. But somebody go try to make a game-changing play. And some of those instincts and those, we see it with young cornerbacks within the division. Asante Samuel, Patrick Surtain. You see it with the great cornerbacks who make those game-changing plays that sometimes they gamble. And that gamble is based on the information that they talk about throughout the week. And they say, when they're in these splits, 70% of the time they're running this route. They have that info.
Yes.
They just need to remember it in the moment and trust, hey, I'm going to make a play here because they haven't really shown to jump a lot of these routes. So there's not a tendency that these guys can beat on all these double moves. Now's the time to go and trust it.
God,
and go try to make a play.
That's a great thought. It's a great thought because so far this year, they just said, hey, just stay in front of your man or stay hip to hip with him.
Yeah. The ball's coming out quick. We know that.
Yes, you do know
the
that.
Route combinations, they're not going to run a triple move on. You may run a sluggo or something. And as long as the safety behind you is aware, you can communicate a little bit with him. Go steal a possession. Go try to make a play. Try to jump something because it's a split second. And same thing goes for the safeties. When you see the splits and you see the formations that dictate, hey, we know what they like to run in this situation. We know the ball is going to come out quick. Take advantage of that on the back end of things and try to go make a game-changing play.
God, it's a great point. It's such a great point. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. I want to get a great point. I need information on Mecole Hardman. Is he going to play again this season? Because again, same reason that I think Kadarius Toney could be the biggest X factor for the Chiefs in this game, knowing that Patrick Mahomes isn't going to scramble a lot. He's not going to make a lot of things happen. They're going to get the ball out of his hands quickly. It's going to be a very horizontal type stretching you out kind of situation. And players like Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore to a huge effect. And then Mecole Hardman could conceivably on paper make a difference here if he can get out on the field. What are your thoughts on Mecole Hardman's availability this weekend?
This is the week. Now I've said before he's had 2 setbacks. He had a mini setback last week. They didn't want to rush him or put him in a difficult situation, so he didn't play against Jacksonville. If he practices on Wednesday, that is the first sign that he's going to try to tough it out and go. He needs to practice Wednesday and Thursday or Thursday and Friday. I don't think Chiefs fans should ask a ton from Mecole Hardman if he is in uniform Sunday. But if Mecole can give 2 to 3 memorable moving the chain plays, that might be enough to get you from, field goal range to in the red zone. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, the game really starts on 3rd down and red zone between these 2 teams. These teams can move the ball up and down the field. You sort of saw that in the first meeting this year and obviously in the postseason last season. Mecole's going to try. I don't know if he's going to have another setback and if that's going to obviously impact his availability for perhaps even the Super Bowl should the Chiefs win on Sunday. But if he does play, he's going to be at sometimes a decoy, sometimes an option that you really have to account for because he does have elite speed. And then, if he feels comfortable, can he give 1 to 2 to maybe 3 memorable snaps for his teammates to get them in a better position to win the game? We already know Mahomes is going to try to do everything he can, and that they're going to have to be ultra creative in sort of moving the football down the field, especially early when he has to find a way to get into a rhythm in terms of here's what I need to do for accuracy. Here's what I need to do for my base. Here's what I need to do to sort of get through the progressions without having to totally worry about, you know, how my lower body's reacting to, you know, how the treatment has gone, and obviously, you know, not playing on adrenaline like you did the first time. Of course, the offensive line is going to have to be excellent. This is a huge Jerick McKinnon game, in my opinion. And of course, they may have to run the ball out of shotgun exclusively because it's hard for a quarterback to turn and run stretch plays if he ain't got his ankle right. Every time they went in shotgun, I kind of held my breath, BJ. I know they did it for you know, we got to do it for balance purposes, but every time he did it in Saturday's game, it was like, who hold your breath? Can he make the landmark in time to get the handoff correctly?
Yeah.
So maybe that improves over the week. Who knows? But I do think Mecole will try. It's just a matter of how does he do in Wednesday's practice? Does he get through it correctly? And then Thursday, can he sort of maintain those level of reps so they can at least see his part of the game plan on the field in vision, and then hopefully realize that like he's not having, you know, too much pain in his abdomen, you know, midsection area. It's really, right. I don't know if it's totally a core muscle, because there's been some discussion about that. We have not talked to Mecole Hardman since the injury occurred.
But nobody, it's not like Rick or any like Monaco. None of those guys came out and to speak about what this injury actually was. We still don't really know if it was a hernia or something else, correct?
Correct. It could be a hernia. It could be,
okay.
You know, obviously when he was on the injury report, he was on the injury report most recently for a pelvis. So I don't know if there's sort of a strain there or a pulled muscle somewhere in that area. Or we don't know if it's, you know, related to the fact that like obviously the injury started in like that core muscle abdominal area earlier. So, you know, it might be a situation. And again, it'd be helpful if the Chiefs were transparent, but you know, for strategic advantages, this is what NFL teams do.
Right.
Whether one injury,
they shouldn't. I'm kind of glad they don't give it out. Like as much as I curiously want to know, like Mecole doesn't need that out there. Like the players don't need that out there necessarily.
So he's trying. He's going to try to play.
All right. What worries me most about you just mentioning that, you know, Mahomes under shotgun, what are they going to do at 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 when they can't run that little inside fullback trap play, which worked about 37 times in a row and then now has not worked in about 7 straight plays. So you got to come up with something else on 3rd or 4th and short.
I will just tell people it's 3rd and 1. If they're in shotgun, the coaching staff has basically acknowledged he has 2 chances to get 1 yard with the ball.
Run the Chad Henne. We're going to call it the Chad Henne play. We've seen it a couple of times from Chad Henne, which throws the quick out to the slot receiver, like get rid of it.
Can he roll out though? That's the thing. Can he roll to his right like Chad does and find, you know, the easy outlet? Whether that's Tyreek Hill or Kadarius Toney, I don't know.
It'll be fine, Nate. It's not as big. It's not as bad as the Jacksonville one. Remember, everything will be fine.
It's you get a lot of optimistic talk on Monday, BJ. You know this. You get a lot of optimistic on Monday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, reality becomes more prominent in terms of
Jay Glazer
magnitude.
Jay Glazer's report was Sunday morning saying Mahomes woke up and felt better than he expected. Like, well, thank you for making me feel better. I don't trust any of this. That's a Vegas line move. It still didn't matter because it went down to 1 point. All right, Nate, before we let you go, give us a score prediction. What do you think is going to go down in this game?
Oh, God, I don't want to do this. I'm
basically a pick 'em at this point, which with the Chiefs being at home, we had talked about this earlier, and I think it was you and I that talked about it, saying don't be surprised if these two teams meet in the playoffs. Bengals come to Kansas City and they end up being favorited, because we are going to have all kinds of ammunition and all kinds of things being said that will keep the players fired up. But let's add some more. I'll send this to the Bengals crew. Know a couple of people in their internal video department. They came from Kansas City. They want to beat the Chiefs as much as anybody. I'll send it straight to them. So this will go straight to the bulletin board material. They need some more after they found the ticket refund. That's what they used as motivation. I do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, I know. Like
does it. Sorry.
Use what you got to use, though, BJ. Use what you got.
Every team sells tickets ahead of time. The Bengals did it themselves.
Every team's got to. Hey, look, he got. By the way, Zach Taylor. I mean, classic coach. Got in the locker room and said, "Where else do we want to be than Kansas City?" And I was like,
Coach, it's called Cincinnati. That's where we want to be, Coach. Coach, we want the game to be at home. I want to be in my own home city. That's where I'd want to be. We wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here, boys. And it's like, do we have to go to Arrowhead? We did that last year. So look, use what you can do. Psychologically motivate yourself. Get everything you've heard. We don't
quit dancing around at Trebek. Who's going to win this game on Sunday? Chiefs or Bengals?
I'm around this team more often than the Bengals, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Nate.
Bengals 20.
Matt Miller already picked the Bengals earlier this week.
Bengals 27, Chiefs 23. Look,
you're dead to me.
Look, I said it when the show began. The Chiefs have already done what I thought was going to be extremely challenging for them to do this season. Now you're asking, and I'm not saying it can't happen, but you're asking Patrick Mahomes on 1.5 feet, basically.
Damn right we are.
To take you to the Super Bowl. If he pulls this off, it will be more impressive in some ways than he did in 2020 when he had the turf toe and he had a concussion. I know some people were like, well, he was never diagnosed. Guys, you don't.
When he came back from a dislocated knee, but.
Oh, well, at least that was weeks out. By the way, one of the most amazing plays is, dude, your kneecap was dislocated, and in less than a month, you were throwing jump pass darts to Mecole Hardman for touchdowns.
That was the night that Paul Schruppel became a Kansas City legend. If you don't know the name Paul Schruppel, he's the doctor who ran on the field and reset his kneecap.
Yeah. Thank you, Siri. And so look,
she even knows who
Paul
Schruppel is.
I know he is the best quarterback. I know he is the most talented passer of the football in arguably NFL history.
Mm-hmm.
The Bengals are also really, really good, and their quarterback is less injured than the Chiefs quarterback. And maybe this will prove that coaching really matters, because if the Chiefs coaching staff can mitigate what you would assume would be a schematical disadvantage and maybe even give you a small advantage schematically, then all praise to what the Chiefs coaching staff has done and will do obviously Sunday. But I think it's fair and understandable to say this is a tall task. This is going to be a lot harder than it was to beat Tennessee in 19. You had all the experience and you had the better team in 2020 and you're at home. We all found out last year that they were not the more talented team. And that might still be the case even with a worse circumstance, because your quarterback is not as healthy as you would like him to be in the most important game of the season. So I think it's fair to say Chiefs 20. I think it's fair to say Bengals 27, Chiefs 23. Will I be surprised if Mahomes guides them to the Super Bowl? Not necessarily, but I also understand too that like this is one of the few times all year where I think it's appropriate to pick the opponent to beat the team that I cover, just because I know what the Bengals will provide on the other side of the field.
I think it's a bunch of malarkey, Nate. That's what I think. I don't think they're a more talented team. If Jonah Williams and the offense and La'el Collins were playing, could convince me of that. I don't think they're a more talented team. And I don't think last year proved anything other than the fact that the Chiefs completely let their foot off the gas in the second half of that game. And they gave it away more than the Bengals went and took it. But Bengals win again and they go 4-0 and they beat you twice in a row in the AFC title game at home. Call him daddy. Like, I don't know what else you do at that point. Mm-hmm. It's like, they do it. Yes, there's excuses. Patrick Mahomes, little banged up. Again, I think this is going to be part of the narrative when 20 years, when we talk about Patrick Mahomes, we talk about, remember when he had a bum ankle and he went and beat the Bengals team that no one gave us credit, including our own Nate Taylor, gave us credit that we could go out there and beat. I can't wait to talk to you next week.
I can't
wait to talk to you next Tuesday. I'll be in Vegas. If they ruin a trip to Vegas for 2 years in a row and we're out there and they lose, I'll be so angry. So angry. We'll start our draft content immediately.
I get it.
I'll be upset.
I get it. It's really tough. Like, I don't even know who's going to win the other game, guys. Like,
are you going to go on times ours and pick the Chiefs to win and just cover all your bases, or you're locked in?
You're the first person that's asked me. So I'm going to be true to form, And unless I see something on a Wednesday or a Thursday practice that tells me, ooh, he's moving.
The first 10 minutes, that
moving.
warm up.
Yeah.
You're going to watch the you're going to watch the kick returners catch like 6 passes, listen to some music, watch Jay Harris maybe punt a few.
Yep. And if he moves really well, or hey, maybe if I, the thing I'll remind people really quickly in 2020, the AFC Championship game, with the turf toe, with the concussion, obviously having a concussion the previous week, being in the protocol. I put this on Twitter. Somebody can find it. But I put on Twitter that in the pregame warmup, this man ran a route like he was a wide receiver and caught a jump pass from
So that's what you want to see.
And that's what I said. Oh, he gonna torch these boys. And
so if Patrick Mahomes gets in the pat and go line Friday in the early part of practice when the linemen are doing pat and go, Mahomes runs over and gets involved, you're gonna change your prediction.
If he does a nice job with a little bit of burst in the pregame warmup in the AFC Championship game on Sunday, I will change my tune. Now, obviously, I'll let y'all know on Twitter, but it was at that point where I was like, oh, this spells doom for Buffalo.
Still love you, but I don't like you very much right now, Nate.
I have to be honest. You asked me an honest question. I gave you an honest answer. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm right.
Let us know in the comment sections how you feel about Nate being honest right now. He's completely unbiased. I respect it. I
am a professional journalist who
just said if Patrick Mahomes gets a little sauce in pregame, you're going to change your prediction.
I also said that too.
All right. That's Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Appreciate everybody for hanging out. We'll have plenty more content getting you ready for Chiefs and Bengals on Sunday. Most of us will be out in Las Vegas covering the East-West Shrine Bowl and covering the AFC Championship game. So we'll have a busy week at KC Sports Network, gathering content that we'll post here in a few weeks once the season is over, hopefully after a Super Bowl win and Nate is proven wrong about what's going to go down in the AFC title game. But we appreciate you all for hanging out. Hit the like and subscribe, follow us, and shame Nate on Twitter. See y'all.